Hello there, and welcome to this video on slope point form. So this is the third form that we've looked at so far. We've actually seen this form right here, y equals mx plus b, and then we've seen also our general form in the last video. So today we're learning a new form. So a slope point form, it says, is the equation of a non-vertical line in the form y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, and all of this is in brackets. That's going to be important. And then it says where m is the slope, so that's what it always was. M always represents slope for us. And then it says x1 and y1 are coordinates of a point on the line, which that was the same as what we had before as well. So in our first example, it says write the equation of the line through the point -2 and 5, and the slope is -3 in the form of, and then we're going to do slope point form, y equals mx plus b form, and then our general form. So whenever you guys are given a point, always label it x1, y1, like we've done before, so that when you see that x1, y1, you know where you're going to put those values. You're going to put it into those two spots right there. And same with the slope. We know slope is just m, so I can see that's going to go up into that spot right there. So part A, we're going to do the slope point form first. So that form was y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, and that's all in brackets. Make sure you have brackets. And then we're just going to fill that in. So it's going to be y minus, and then y1 we labeled, it was a 5, equals, m is a -3. Then we got x minus, and then our x1 was a -2. Now these two negatives I can simplify. So those two negatives are going to give me a positive, so let's write that. Everything else is just going to stay the same. So I got x plus 2 now, and in brackets. So that would be your slope point form. You don't have to do anything else. You just plug it in, and then maybe if you have some signs, you can simplify and get your final answer. So part A is done. Part B, we were going to do our y equals mx plus b form. So this is where you just start to take what we had here and rearrange it to look like the y equals mx plus b form. So I am going to move everything onto the other side of the equation. So I'm going to move this -5 to the other side of the equation. So to do that, I just have to add 5 onto both sides. So when I do that, I'm going to have y equals, I'm going to add 5, and I'm also going to add 5 on the other side. So they would cancel on this side. I'm just going to erase that though, because I want to keep my answer there all visible. And what I'm going to have on the other side, I'm going to have -3 times x plus 2. And then I just have this plus 5 here on the other side. And then to make it look like this, y equals mx plus b, that one doesn't have any brackets. So you want to distribute into your brackets to get rid of the brackets, and then after just add 5. So we're going to have y equals -3 times x will give me -3x, and then -3 times 2 would give me -6, and then I just have plus 5. So simplifying that, I'm going to have y equals -3x, and then these two I can put together. That's just a -1. And that's your final answer for the part B. Part C now is general form, so I'm going to do that over here. So general form was everything all on one side lined up nicely, just like the army, general in the army. So I'm going to move everything over to this side, over with the y, so that everything is on one side. And then also when I move it over, that's going to make my x positive, which is what I want. Rather than moving it to this side and then this is still negative on this side, if I move the -3x over to the other side, then it's going to be positive. So when that -3x moves over, we're going to have positive 3x. And then there was a y already on that side, positive. Doesn't change sign because it didn't move. And then the -1, it moved over, so it became a positive 1. And then we had nothing on the other side, so equals 0. And then we just had to make sure the number in front of our x, it had to be a positive integer. So it can't be negative and it can't be any fraction. So in this case, we're all good. It's just a 3. And then lastly, what we had to do for part D, we had to graph it. So to graph it, we can just use the information we were given right here. I'm going to plot this point, -2 and 5. It's just like every time we've done our graphing, plot a point. So -2 and 5, that is right there. That's 5 up. So there's -2 and 5. and then we're going to use our slope, and our slope was -3. So that's like -3 over 1. So the -3, that is our rise. Remember, it's rise over, and then that's our run. So we're actually going to fall 3 and then run over 1. So I'm going to fall 3, 1, 2, 3, and then run over 1. So we're going to be right there. And then you could do it again, fall 3, 1, 2, 3, and then run over 1. So there's another point. The more points you put on, the easier it is for you to put your ruler on and make your line through, but really you only need 2 points to draw your line. So next, put your ruler on, draw your line through your points. And then just make sure always at the end of your line, put on your arrows. So question number 1 is now done. Question number 2 is the exact same. So if you guys want to pause the video here and then try to go through all of those steps, you can do that now and try to do question number 2. So again, with question number 2, we were given a point. We should label it. So call this x1, y1, and then we were given the slope. It was 2, so I'm just going to put an m there. Just makes it easier when we go to do slope point form. So our slope point form, it was y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 in brackets, and then just fill everything in. So it was y minus y1 is a -4, and then our m was a 2, then we got x minus, and x1 was a 3. And then we just got to simplify this. So these two negatives there, that's going to give us a positive. So we got +4 equals, and everything else will just stay the same. So part A is done. We've got slope point form. Part B, we're going to find the y equals mx plus b form. So again, just get everything onto the other side. So I'm going to have to get rid of that 4. So when I move the 4 over, it's going to become minus. So I got 2 times x minus 3. And then the 4 moved over, so now it's -4. And then we didn't have any brackets in this y equals mx plus b form, so just get rid of the brackets. We got to distribute into the brackets. So I'm going to have a 2 times an x, that's 2x. And then we're going to have 2 times -3, that's -6. And then I can put -6 and -4 together, so I'm going to have -10. So there is our final answer. Part C now was our general form. So for that, you just had to get everything all on one side. So I'm going to have to get rid of this y right here. I'm going to move it to the other side. So when I do, there's going to be nothing on this side. And then I'm going to have a 2x. And when that y moved over, it's now a minus y. And then I have the -10. Again, we just always want to put it in the order x, y, and then the constant number at the end. And then always check to make sure the number in front of the x, it can't be negative, and it can't be a fraction. And in this case, it's not, so we're good. Then lastly, part D, we got to graph it. So let's plot our point. It was at 3 and -4. So over to 3, that's right there. And then down -4. So that's going to get us to right here. So that was at 3 and -4. And then we're going to use our slope. Again, our slope in this case was 2. So I'm just going to put m equals 2. And 2 is like 2 over 1. So we're going to rise 2. And then we're going to run 1. So let's rise 2, 1, 2, and then run 1. So it gets another point. And then do it again. Rise 2, run 1, rise 2, run 1. And again, you only ever need 2 points. Just makes it easier to draw your line. And for drawing your line, got to use a ruler. So there's our line. And then again, just make sure you got those arrows. So question 2 is now all done. We're going to move to our next thing, which is going to be to determine the equation using 2 points. So you're going to be given 2 points, and then we're going to come up with the equation. So it says any point on a line can be used when determining the equation of the line in slope point form, just as long as they give you 2 points. So in question number 1, it says use the slope point form to write an equation of the line in general form through, and then they give us these 2 points. So I am going to label the points. I'm going to call this one x1, y1. And then I'll call my second point x2, y2. And again, you can't call them both x1, y1 because they're not the same point. So whenever we were given 2 points like this before in another lesson that we did, what we could do with 2 points was we could come up with the slope. Remember, we had this formula, m equals y2 minus y1, all divided by x2 minus x1. So that's another reason why we want to label our stuff like this, because once I see that, I can look to my formula sheet and I'm going to see this formula that has those things, and then it makes it easier to know what step we got to do next. So I'm just going to fill everything into that formula. So y2 is negative 1, minus y1 is negative 4, and then all divided by x2 was a 5 minus, and then x1 is a 3. So in the top here, these two negatives is going to make it a plus. So we're going to have m equals negative 1 plus a 4 divided by, and I can simplify this right away. 5 minus 3 is just 2. And then in our last step, the negative 1 and the plus 4, that's just a plus 3. So it's going to be 3 over 2. So now that I have my slope, and I know these 2 points here, this is kind of like the previous question. In the previous question, we were given a point and a slope. Now we actually have 2 points and a slope. So all I got to do to get the slope point form is I'm going to choose one of those points. It doesn't matter which point I choose. So let's write out our slope point form. It was y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 in brackets. And again, it doesn't matter which point I pick. Usually though, I pick the one that I already labeled as x1, y1 because I see I have those right here again. So it's going to be y minus, and then y1 was negative 4 equals m, we found was 3 over 2. And then we got x minus, and then x1 was a 3. And then all we got to do is simplify those two negatives. So it's going to be y plus a 4 equals 3 over 2 times x minus 3. And now that we've got that simplified, remember to move to general form, everything's got to be on one side, and the term in front of the x can't be a fraction or negative. So let's move these to the other side, and when they move over there, they're going to change to the opposite sign. So we're going to have 0 here, and then we got 3 over 2 times x minus 3 in brackets, and then those two other points moved over, so it's a minus y and then a minus 4. So general form, I'm just going to write it up here again. It looked like this: ax plus by plus c equals 0. So there's no brackets. We got to get rid of the brackets. So I'm going to have this 3 over 2 multiplying into my brackets, distributing in, so we get rid of it. So I'm going to have 3 over 2 times x. That's just 3 over 2x. And then 3 over 2 times a negative 3, that's going to be, just multiply the top with the top. So that's going to be a negative 9 over 2. And then I still had minus y and minus 4. What you should do next, in order to get rid of this fraction that we couldn't have in front of our x, there's a 2 down here. Multiply every single term by 2. So the 0 will get multiplied by 2, this 3 over 2 gets multiplied by 2, the 9 over 2 gets multiplied by 2, the y, and this negative 4. Everything gets multiplied by 2. I don't have to multiply this x by 2 because it is with the 3 over 2. That is all one thing. I'm already multiplying by 2 once. So this 2 is going to cancel with any 2 that's in a denominator. So it actually kind of gets rid of all of our fractions. So what I'm left with is, on the left, we got 0 times 2, that's 0. Then we had 3x, that was the only thing that didn't cancel. Then we had minus 9, minus 2y, and then the last one, minus 8. And then these two terms I can put together. Minus 8 and minus 9, that's just going to give me minus 17. So I'm going to have 0 equals 3x. Then we'll put the y second, because it's how our general form looks. And then minus 9 and minus 8 was minus 17. Okay, so just to review everything we did there, we used our slope formula to find our slope. We've done that before. Then we plugged that into our slope point form. And then from there, we just started to break it down and try to get rid of these brackets and move everything onto the one side, because that's what general form is. So once we got everything to the one side and we had these fractions, multiply by whatever's in the denominator. That should get rid of all of your fractions everywhere. And then lastly, put together your two common terms to get that final constant value. And just to show you guys that it doesn't matter which point you pick, we picked 3 and negative 4. You could pick 5 and negative 1. So if you did pick 5 and negative 1, here would be the work for that. So I put in the 1 and the negative 5 I rearranged and simplified, and I get the exact same answer. So it doesn't matter which point you actually pick, you're still going to get the same answer for both. So in this part B example we have here now, right here, if you want to pause the video and try to use the steps that we just did in part A, you can do that now. So again with part B, we're going to want to label, we're going to have x1, y1, and then x2, y2. And then we're going to use that in our formula and find our slope. So we're going to have m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And then we just plug into that. So y2 was a 1, then we had minus, y1 is a 2, divided by, and then x2 was a negative 2, subtract, and then x1 was a negative 5. So in the top, 1 minus 2, that's just negative 1. And then in the denominator, these two negatives, that's going to be a plus. So it's negative 2 plus 5, so that's going to give us a 3. So our slope is negative 1 over 3. And then now that we have our slope, we're going to use that and plug it into our slope point form. So that was this right here. So my slope is going to plug in for m, and then my x1 and y1 can plug into where I have them right here. So I'm going to have y minus, and then y1 was a 2, equals m, that was our slope, negative 1 over 3. Then we had x minus x1, which was a negative 5, and again that's in brackets. And then we just start to simplify, move everything all into one side. So I'm going to keep the left the same how it is. And then on the right, I'm going to take these two negatives. That's going to be a plus. So I got negative 1 over 3 times x plus a 5. And then what we'll do is let's move over these two terms to the other side. When they move over, they're going to change to the other sign. And there's going to be nothing on this side. So we're going to have this first part written out. It won't change. And then when the y came over, it's now negative y. And when negative 2 came over, it's now plus 2. And then what we want to do, we don't like these brackets here, so to get rid of the brackets, we got to distribute into our brackets. So we're going to have 0 equals negative 1/3 times x is negative 1/3 x. And then we got a negative 1/3 times positive 5. That's going to be negative 5/3. And then we got the minus y and the plus 2. Now again, we got a fraction here with our x, so to get rid of the fraction, just multiply everything by that denominator. So we are going to multiply everything by a 3. And don't forget, it's every single term gets multiplied by 3. Even that 0 there is getting multiplied by 3. So this 3 will cancel with this 3, and this 3 will cancel with this 3. And so we just get out 0 equals negative 1x minus 5. Then we got a 3 times a y, so that's a minus 3y. And then we got a plus 2 times a 3, so that's just plus 6. So these two numbers can now go together. That's just going to give me a plus 1. So I got 0 equals negative x minus 3y, and then a plus 1. And now with this one, though, we have a minus here. So to get rid of the minus, we just got to divide everything by a minus 1. So divide by minus 1, every single term. And then it's going to cancel with that one. This one's also going to cancel. So our final answer, we got 0 equals x plus 3y, because those two negatives canceled. And then these two, the plus and the minus, that's just going to give us a minus. And then we got a 1. So that right there is our final answer. So last thing here, just at the bottom, we got our textbook questions. So our questions are on page 377.